And now, Michael the Magic will attempt to escape from extreme bondage. Can he do it? I don't see how he can.
The Office ended in 2013, a show about a mid-sized paper company in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And somehow, over a decade later, it's one of the most watched shows among people who weren't even old enough to remember it the first time it aired. That's a strange thing. If you actually sit with it, not, oh, nostalgia makes sense, strange. Genuinely strange. Nostalgia usually requires you to have been there. A huge chunk of the people rewatching this show right now were toddlers, or not born yet for most of its original run. So the question I kept coming back to was pretty simple. Why this show exactly?
It must be fun to, is this your first television series?
It is.
It must be fun to have it being so successful.
Yeah, it's been really wild. I mean, the show has sort of gained success slowly, so that's been nice. But people actually ask me, like, what's the biggest difference between your life a few years ago and your life now?
I think a big part of it is comfort, though I'll be upfront, this next part is more of an argument than a fact I can point to a chart for. A lot of people watching this right now are dealing with a version of having a job that didn't really exist the same way for the people in that show. Rent that doesn't match what you're getting paid. This expectation that a job isn't allowed to just be a job anymore. It's supposed to be your passion, your purpose, the thing that fulfills you. There's a sociologist, Aaron Seck, who's written specifically about this shift. The idea that work is supposed to mean something now, not just pay the bills. Now go back and watch The Office with that in your head. Nobody in that building has their dream job. Jim sells paper and openly hates it for half the show. Pam wanted to be an artist. Dwight is, generously, a beet farmer with a badge, and they're fine. Better than fine, they're some of the happiest characters on television, doing a completely unremarkable job because the people around them make it work anyway.
This big fat pig is beautiful.
There's something a little absurd about how comforting this show is too. Michael Scott nearly burns the building down on purpose, in front of his own employees, and 20 minutes later, everyone's just back at their desks like nothing happened. That's not really how a workplace would go, but maybe that's part of the appeal. Nothing that happens in that office actually threatens anyone. And then there's the setting itself.
They're back? Oh, Pam!
Nope.
And, oh, Jim!
Hi, Michael.
Which I think matters more than people give it credit for. An office where everyone's genuinely in the same room, walking over to someone's desk instead of messaging them, a birthday cake in the break room that half the office pretends to care about. For a lot of younger viewers, that's barely something they've lived. A lot of them started working from a bedroom, not a building. So watching The Office isn't just comfort. It's a little bit of a fantasy, almost like a memory of something you never actually got to have yourself. Okay, so that's the theory. Here's where it stops being a theory, because I didn't want to just assume all this. So I went and looked at the actual numbers, and they back up the age gap idea more than I expected. Back in 2018, Nielsen tracked viewing across Netflix's library, and those numbers got shared with the Wall Street Journal the following year. The Office alone accounted for nearly 3% of everything watched on Netflix in the US that year. Not 3% of comedies, 3% of the entire platform, 52 billion minutes. Friends showed up on that same report in second place at around 33 billion minutes. Still enormous, just not quite the same weight class. That's raw popularity though. It doesn't tell you who's watching. For that, there's a survey. Rotten Tomatoes asked people their single favorite classic comedy, broken down by age, and this is the part that actually answers the question I opened with. Among era 18 to 34-year-olds, The Office won. About 12% named it their favorite, just ahead of Friends at around 11, with Parks and Rec behind that at around 9. Flip to the 35 to 54 group, and the order flips with it. Friends and Seinfeld pull ahead of The Office there, go to 55 and older, and MASH is the clear favorite by a solid margin, a show that barely registers with anyone younger. So this isn't just a feeling people have online. There's an actual generational split in the data, and The Office is specifically the one winning with the youngest viewers, not just performing fine across the board the way Friends is.
What's this? Looks like a red wire.
Well, I wasn't here before.
Well, it's a computer, Dwight. I mean, computers have wires.
Yours doesn't.
Doesn't it?
one more number because I think it's the best evidence of all of this. When The Office left Netflix for Peacock at the start of 2021, it stopped showing up on Nielsen's weekly streaming charts. Those only track the very top shows each week, so that's not unusual by itself. What is unusual is that in the week of January 22nd through 28th, 2024, 3 years later, no reunion, no anniversary, nothing prompting it, it showed back up. 602 million minutes in a single week for a show that had just been sitting quietly on Peacock the whole time. That's a show finding new viewers on its own, with no real marketing push behind it. And it's happening at the exact moment a lot of people assumed Gen Z had checked out of anything longer than 15 seconds. There's a report from Activate Consulting that made the rounds last year, saying 43% of Gen Z now lean on YouTube and TikTok as their main source for media and news. And somehow, in that exact environment, an old sitcom about a paper company is still finding its way to new 18-year-olds. Make of that what you will. So how does a show that ended before some of its current fans could read even find them in the first place? Honestly, memes, Michael Scott quotes, have basically become their own currency online at this point. You've probably reacted to something with an Office clip without even clocking that it came from The Office originally. Nobody planned that. That's just what happens when a joke is good enough to survive completely out of its original context, passed around by people who weren't old enough to watch it live. But I don't think memes alone explain a decade of staying power. Underneath the jokes, this is a show about people who didn't pick each other, ending up like family anyway. Nobody at Dunder Mifflin chose their coworkers. They just got stuck in the same building 5 days a week, and somehow it turned into something real. If you're anxious about ending up isolated, and a lot of people this age say they are, that idea does something. It says you don't need to engineer the perfect friend group. Sometimes it just happens with whoever's around if you let it.
I feel like all my kids grew up and then they married each other. It's every parent's dream.
It's worth saying, too, The Office didn't invent any of this. The whole format is lifted from the original British version, Ricky Gervais' show years earlier.
David Brent, my liege. How are you?
Michael Scott.
Oh, bloody hell. I do characters as well. I got a Chinese fella, not politically correct, but he's called Holy That's what it sounds like.
What the American version did was take that format and put it in front of a massive audience for 9 seasons to become the reference point for everyone after it. Parks and Recreation came out of that same creative team using that same fly-on-the-wall style. You can draw a pretty direct line from there to Brooklyn Nine-Nine to Abbott Elementary. So even people who've never watched a single episode of The Office have probably been watching shows shaped by it their whole lives. And the story isn't really finished either. In 2025, a lot of the same creative team behind The Office launched a spin-off called The Paper, using that same documentary style. It's early, too early for me to tell you. It's found its own Jim and Pam. But it's a pretty clear bet from the people who made the original that this format still has somewhere left to go. I don't think people keep coming back to this show because they want to live in Scranton. I don't even think it's really about the paper company at all. I think it's simpler than that. It's a place where people show up day after day, sit near each other, get on each other's nerves, and somehow end up family anyway. Nobody planned it. It just happened because they kept showing up. Maybe that's the whole appeal.